you. But everybody, welcome to this week's webinar. We're focused on mental health, a really kind of the vital role that mental health plays in trying to manage mild cognitive impairment a little bit. We're going to dive into the topic today and talk about this connection between mental health and early stage memory loss and try to really aim to shed some light on some empowering strategies and insights that will make a difference in your daily life. But one of our primary goals for today is also to break down the barriers and the stigma surrounding conversations about mental health. We really do believe in this, coming from a yoga teacher and a social worker, we really do believe that an open dialogue and an understanding are key to creating supportive environments where your feelings are important, that you have space to acknowledge them, and that really value the way that you're feeling, which is important. So we want to address this topic today really openly, really compassionately. We want to work together to help remove some of the stigma and really create this culture around acceptance, support, and resilience and mental health. So together today, Debbie is going to navigate this journey with a lot of compassion, with her commitment to really kind of breaking down some of the tall, it may seem like so much to talk about mental health. And I feel like we're kind of getting down into it today with a step towards a greater understanding and that acknowledgement that there's a lot of support out there. So we're grateful for you, Debbie, for joining us today. And thank you so much for being here to talk about a topic that maybe in some spaces is kind of like off topic or not on the table to discuss. So thank you for bringing that into the conversation today. Like I said,
Great. Are y'all able to hear me and see my slides?
yes.
Awesome. I'm really pleased to be here today. As Megan said, I am the social worker on the Cognitive Empowerment Program team. And the sessions that I lead, along with Suzette Binford, our counselor, are called Live Well. And we really are considering what does it take to live well in spite of having a mild cognitive impairment diagnosed. So one of the definite things it takes is being able to manage feeling sad or anxious. And that's, as Megan said, that really is a prerequisite for being a human being, right? We all have feelings of sadness or anxiety once in a while. And so knowing how to manage these really helps us to live better. And there we go. Okay, so if you are someone who is a member or a care partner in our Cognitive Empowerment Program, this diagram is familiar to you. This is a Venn diagram developed by a social worker named Robin Yale, and it really outlines the domains of coping that we feel are necessary to live in spite of a cognitive impairment. And right there at the top under emotional issues is feelings. So I don't expect you to, tattoo this on your brain, and it's not really necessary, but just to know that this is a core area for us. So emotional regulation is really a complex process for human beings, modulating our feelings, our thoughts, and behaviors. But for our purposes here, consider that when your feelings are demanding all of your attention or immediate attention, it's really hard to engage fully in relationships and in activities and to focus and pay attention to a task at hand. So at CEP, we talk a lot about how important it is to remain fully engaged, but it's not like flipping a switch, right? It's not something that you can just do by, muscling yourself into that decision. It's a goal. So we wanted to talk about what it takes to set yourself up for success here. All of these feelings here are normal, and becoming more aware of your feelings might mean confronting some of the feelings that you wish you didn't have, or maybe the feelings you wish you had less often. And again, that's kind of that's true for all of us. Uh, I also wanted to talk about managing anxiety and depression. Um, it's kind of analogous to the steps that people take when they go camping to prevent a raging forest fire. So it's not realistic to rein it in once the mountain is burning. Um, but it is realistic to take some small steps here and there to make sure that we're taking good care to prevent, a really severe mental illness episode. So most people, know the drill. Fresh air, regular exercise, healthy diet, um, being hydrated, especially, this time of year, it's getting warmer out, but also the air conditioning is on when we're indoors and it's very dehydrating. Um, Practicing good sleep hygiene. So all that means is, getting a good night's sleep, going to sleep at the same basic time each evening, and waking up in the morning, even if you don't have an appointment to get up for early in the day, keeping the same kind of sleep habits, even when you don't have particular plans, is really important. And we'll talk a little bit more about avoiding caffeine and stuff like that too. Um, so the degree to which people are comfortable talking with about their feelings is very variable. And the truth is that we all have a different kind of feelings vocabulary too. Uh, so some people journal and they're really in touch with what they're feeling, how they're feeling, why they may be reacting the way they are, the patterns that show up for them. And sometimes people do this, their whole lives. But if you're not a person that has done that your whole life, and you do want to really take charge of managing your difficult feelings, it's not too late to do that. Um, People with mild cognitive impairment can and do benefit from therapy, individual therapy, support groups, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about how to access a support group or find a therapist who really is trained in this. It is a specialty. Not every therapist is knowledgeable or comfortable serving clients who have a cognitive impairment. But it's a good place to start. So it also, mild cognitive impairment can present different challenges to different individuals. And one of the things that might show up for a person is it's more challenging to interpret the nonverbal cues that their loved ones are exhibiting. So you, it means extra communication and double checking is necessary. So, you might say to your spouse, are you sad? It looks to me like you're sad. And maybe your spouse says, no, I'm just tired, but thanks for asking. It's nice to know you care. Or they might say, am I sad? Yes. If I think about it, I'm kind of disappointed. I was hoping we could get tickets for this concert, but it was sold out. And so double checking and extra communicating are good tools to have on your tool belt. It's important to take good care of yourself, especially when you're not liking how you feel. So, thinking of these fresh air and exercise, this list not as like nasty medicine that you have to take, but this is medically necessary for me to continue to thrive despite this condition that I've been diagnosed with. Many people with mild cognitive impairment do experience some feelings of sadness. It does kind of come with this territory for a lot of people. Um, you might be sad about the diagnosis, or you might have feelings of loss about not being able to, do the things that you once were able to do better than you are able to do them now. And it's normal that in the process of adjusting to change, there's some grief. If you are having thoughts of harming yourself or feeling so bad that you just don't want to live, that's an emergency. So this is not the webinar that's going to solve that. And we want, this will be recorded. You can watch it at your leisure on YouTube, but jump off this webinar and call 988, which is the crisis line, to speak with someone immediately if you have suicidal ideation at all. The less obvious symptoms of depression may include just feelings of worthlessness, being kind of tearful, or feelings of emptiness. Most days for a couple of weeks. Also, loss of interest or pleasure in the things or activities that you traditionally have really enjoyed. In time, positive thinking usually does replace negative thoughts and sadness lessens. A mild, an adjustment disorder with depressive features, which mental health experts would diagnose if you have these symptoms most of the day, more days than you don't for several weeks in a row. Usually in time, it gets better on its own. But if it doesn't, and particularly if you're feeling worse, it's really important to report this to your healthcare professional, to your primary care doctor, or to your neurologist. And care partners should also attend appointments with a person that has a mild cognitive impairment because their input is extremely helpful. Sometimes the individual, him or herself, isn't reporting feeling depressed, but the care partner might notice you do seem kind of blue to me. And that's important feedback. Where is my cursor? There I am. Okay. So some things you can try to improve your mood. Seek out and spend time talking with some positive, caring people, a support group, trusted family members or friends, a therapist who's knowledgeable and experienced, working with clients that have a mild cognitive impairment. Again, being active and exercise, setting realistic goals for yourself. I often tell my patients to try to find that exercise that you hate the least. It might be dancing, it might be swimming, maybe it's just walking the dog. But anything that you're doing where you are moving your body on a regular basis, we do want you to make sure you have clearance from your docs. So you might tune in and do chair yoga with Megan. It really does seem to make people feel great. I know I did it last week, and it's a great resource that we have on YouTube. Prioritizing tasks and breaking big jobs into smaller steps really helps us to feel more successful and less overwhelmed. Again, positive thinking replaces negative thoughts in time as sadness lessens, but if it doesn't, this is really important to tell your healthcare professional. Antidepressant medication is extremely safe for patients with a mild cognitive impairment. Usually, the class of drugs is the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So, like Prozac, Lexapro family of drugs. They have very few side effects, and many people take them safely, over years. Um, Sometimes just becoming more aware of your negative self-talk goes a long way. If you are a person that tends to kind of have some habits that you get into, what we call cognitive distortions, where we think in terms of black and white, all or nothing, or we use a harsh judgmental tone when we notice things in ourselves. But don't use a tone in your own head that you wouldn't use with someone else that you really care about. Many people with MCI also will experience feelings of anxiety pretty frequently. Anxiety and depression are, kind of kissing cousins. Sometimes they show up together. Sometimes they take turns. Occasional anxiety is an expected part of life, and it's usually temporary. There is survival value for humans to feel anxious. But if you find yourself feeling as though you're being chased by a lion and there's no real lion behind you, then it might be anxiety. So sometimes people describe it as feeling on edge or restless, tense, or irritable. People report difficulty concentrating, or they worry persistently, especially about the future. Um, this often people's performance on some of these assessments where we're diagnosing a cognitive impairment, sometimes we can actually focus and complete these things more successfully if our anxiety is treated because of that difficulty concentrating. And it is normal and natural to be worried about the future. As Megan said in her introduction, some of our patients are stable for a long time in this mild phase, this early uh, stage of Alzheimer's or other dementias. But some patients do progress, and some of you probably have a family history where you've seen someone that you really cared about lose some capacity over time. And it is very scary. So, anxiety is a normal part of life with that. And it's not an irrational response, but it is something that can keep you from experiencing joy and meaning and purpose in your life now. And so if it is zapping the joy from today, worrying about the future, then it might be an anxiety disorder that needs to be treated. So how do you deal with anxiety? Well, here are some practical things that we suggest. One would be to reduce or eliminate stimulants, caffeinated beverages particularly. There are wonderful decaffeinated teas, coffees, and even soft drinks if that's your thing. Eating and drinking healthfully, just really taking care of what I call the physical plant. Managing stress, relaxation, mindfulness, and meditation. I'm going to talk about in a little while. But listening to music that you enjoy, or again, exercise. These are ways that we know have, clinical evidence that they help to decrease anxiety. It's helpful often to identify the cues. Right now it's very trendy to talk about triggers. But if being a passenger in a vehicle on the highway really makes you anxious and you can identify that, then it's important to talk about that, with the folks that you live with and that you travel with, so that maybe you can find a different route together or agree to go at a different time of day if it's easier on you. But so these are things that, as Megan said, the stigma is the power that we give it by shoving it under the rug and trying to white knuckle through as though we're fine. But talking about it really takes the power away from depression and anxiety and allows the people that care about us to give us the support that we need. So talking to a trusted family member or friend, and again, making sure that your sleep is restorative. The room is dark, you have the quiet that you need. And if sleep is giving you a hard time, that's a clinical issue to talk to your healthcare professional about also. So again, if anxiety does not get better on its own, it's important to tell your prescriber about it, because there are some very effective medications. If you find yourself self-medicating, either because of depression or anxiety symptoms, using alcohol or other substances to cope with your symptoms, this is a real sign of distress. Um, it might feel like, this is a strategy for me, but it usually creates new issues, both for your physical health and for the well-being of family relationships. And substance use typically creates more problems than it solves. So that is, it's important to be honest when answering those questions about substance use in your appointments, and for your care partners to speak up if they have concerns. So I wanted, before we go on and talk a little bit more about mindfulness, I did want to just share with you, because I find it really interesting, the results of this study that were recently published by Doctors Waldinger and Schultz. So this book, The Good Life, is basically it's a compilation of the evidence from the longest scientific study of happiness. And I felt like if we were talking about depression and anxiety, then it made sense to me to also talk about happiness and, maybe what it takes to be happy. And what they found in this, this study began in something like 1938 with students at Harvard, and then they had a control group of same-aged people from the community who were not attending college, and they sent them questionnaires every 2 years, and they really dove into their health records throughout their lifetimes, and they took hair samples and all kinds of different things, and they asked them about just like everything, their employment, their professional life, their education, their relationships, their children, their parenting strategies, their faith communities, all kinds of different things. And what they found after 80 plus years of doing this study with the original group and then also with their offspring, is that the quality of relationships was most highly correlated with happiness. So whether somebody had a cocktail after work, or whether they smoked cigarettes, or whether they had been in the military, everything else sort of fell away. And this, the idea of the importance of close relationships really emerged as a really important investment that pays important dividends to our overall well-being. So I highly recommend either reading or listening to this book if you have the opportunity, because I think it's really very interesting. And also how they defined happiness was, you know, that that people had purpose and meaning, and really just life was good. It wasn't, it wasn't anything really fancy. It was that life was good, not every day, all day, but on balance. So, switching gears a little bit, we wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about mindfulness and meditation, because there have been so many clinical trials, and the evidence is just overwhelming, that meditation and mindfulness are really effective for various conditions. And, among these, anxiety and depression really feature very prominently. So meditation can help us to experience our thoughts and our emotions with greater balance and acceptance. And that's, what we all want, is to live in peace with our feelings, right? So mindfulness is a type of meditation where you are intensely aware of what you're sensing and feeling in the moment, without interpretation, so without having to search for meaning, and without judgment, just being present with what is. And practicing mindfulness can involve various things: breathing, guided imagery, other practices that relax our body and our mind, and reduce stress. But we're going to talk about just a couple of them in the couple of minutes that we have. So this list that I'm going to share here. Okay. Um, I kind of think about the list on the left as like the things I can do while I'm standing in line at Publix, or while I'm a passenger in a car, and somebody that's looking at me will not have any idea that I'm practicing mindfulness. It's just, it's just my private thing. But paying attention, it seems self-evident, but it can be hard, to slow down and notice things. The world is busy. There's a lot coming at us at once. So this is an intentional way to take time to notice our experience, and to, really take in the environment with each of our senses. So touch and sound and sight and smell and taste. So, it's not something that you might do constantly all day, but, if you say you go out for ice cream, just paying attention to that very first bite. You are noticing the appearance of it on the spoon. You might smell it. You might feel how cold the cup is in your hand. And when you put it in your mouth, I have us all drooling now, right? You hold it in your mouth and you really experience the taste and the mouth feel. And you'll find that, first of all, you'll enjoy that bite so much more, but also that being in this habit of paying attention allows you to slow down and just experience your environment. So living in the moment, it's a way of saying, again, it's with intention to bring an open attention to everything that you're doing, and just finding the joy in simple pleasures. I read a quote recently that said, that the secret to having enough is being grateful for those things that you have. And I think that that is about that. Accepting yourself, again, we mentioned a little while ago, this self-talk. We all have this narrator in our head, and just being sure that I'm always speaking to myself the way that I speak to the people I care about the most, and to really care about myself, and to not be judgmental and harsh with my self-talk. Focusing on breathing. This is especially useful to try to do as an antidote when you notice that you're ruminating or focusing on negative thoughts and you want to try to break that cycle for yourself. To really intentionally focus on your breath and just notice how the breath feels as it comes in. You can, again, this would be if you don't mind somebody else in the supermarket noticing you doing it, but you might feel your chest rising and falling, or you might place another hand on your abdomen and feel it coming in and out. And just sitting and breathing, even for just a minute, can really lower your blood pressure and allow you to not be focused only on a negative loop. The category on the right, that list, these are things that take a little bit more time and attention, but no special equipment really. The body scan, you might do lying down, although you could also do that sitting. Um, and this is just where you're focusing your attention slowly and deliberately on one part of the body at a time, and just noticing the sensations with each of those parts. Um, you know, are are you breathing fully into your back? And are your feet flat on the floor? And just really experiencing this fully. The sitting meditation, very similar, but really just noticing, you know, the contact points between yourself and the piece of furniture you're sitting on. You could probably do that right now. Just sensing the weight of your body in the chair and going, from the feet resting on the floor all the way up your legs, and really noticing and intentionally letting go of stress in one part of the body at a time. And I know I'm cruising right through this because I'm trying to be quick. Walking meditation, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be on a labyrinth, in some special location. This is something that you can do in the hallway of your home or up and down your front path. 10 or 20 feet of space is really plenty. It just needs to be flat and have nothing to trip over. And this is where you're just really focusing intentionally on the subtle shifts that your body is required to make while you're taking steps. So, we often will walk without thinking much about it, but this way you're noticing the foot as it applies pressure onto the floor, and as you shift your weight from one foot to the other, and how your legs kind of take over, and noticing the breath as you're walking, and you're getting to the end point and you turn around and walk yourself back. And in this way, you're just really hyper focusing on um, the quality of walking and the experience of walking in a way that excludes the stressful things that show up, of making a grocery list in the back of your mind. If those things show up, we just ask them to wait until we're done. They'll be there. They'll come back if they're important. So What's the recommended dose? Come on, inner peace. I don't have all day. How much? How long? Right? How do I know if I'm doing it right or if it's working? Well, we suggest about 15 minutes a day. Every day? What? Yes, but please don't consider it that it's like nasty tasting medicine that you have to take. Consider it a gift, an investment in your own well-being. And the only criteria that you're grading yourself on is that if and when you notice your mind wandering, you're gentle and you begin anew. So you don't even have to notice where your mind is wandering to. You just notice that you're starting to stray and you gently come back and begin again. And that's why this is called a practice. You're practicing being non-judgmental with yourself. You're practicing the beginning again, and you're practicing really focusing on the here and now, so that the ruminating about the past I can't change and the anxiety about the future that I might worry about are not here with me at this moment. Um, how do I know if it's working? Well, maybe it will take less work for you to make yourself do it. Um, maybe other people will notice that it's working, that you seem lighter. Um, but, the truth is, we don't know any adverse effects. Nobody has ever overdosed on mindfulness. So we're less worried about the dosage than we might be with other interventions. And if you're interested in learning more about this, I really recommend a book called 10% Happier by the journalist Dan Harris. He used to be on, oh gosh, I'm not going to remember what program it. Now the host is David Muir. Um, but anyway, it's 10% Happier. And then the companion guide that he wrote was Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. And now there's an app that goes with it as well. And I really do recommend that. It's written for regular people, not for people who are joining an ashram. I'm not making you do that. And I hope that this is helpful, that these tools will offer you some support and guidance, and that you'll let us know what works.